Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I am thrilled to welcome someone who's a cartoonist, illustrator, writer, and whose work has been featured in places such as Mad Magazine, Feller, Newsweek, and she's also worked with people like Rosen and Mayim Bialik. Please help me welcome Chari Pere. Chari, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but I want to start with where did you grow up?
I was born in Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklyn girl.
Yay, Brooklyn. Okay. We are fellow Brooklynites. Okay.
Yeah, and raised in Staten Island. And then after I got married, I was in LA for 11 years, and now I'm back on the East Coast.
Where in Brooklyn did you grow up?
I was there only for a few years. I lived in Canarsie, which was an amazing community. And I went to Yeshiva Flatbush for 12 years, so I spent a lot of my time in the Flatbush area.
Did you really? Okay.
Yeah. I lived in Staten Island and did that terrible commute for 12 years.
Okay, when we're done, I'm going to have to talk to you off the air because I know a lot of people that went to Flatbush, and I was very close to Canarsie also. I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, so we were very close. So what was your family life like? Did you come from an observant family then? Obviously, then I guess a little bit, somewhat, if you went to Flatbush.
Yeah, I mean, we're a modern Orthodox family, but the interesting thing is that where I lived in Staten Island, we were a mile and a half away from the closest shul, and the shul we went to was about 1.9 miles away. Okay. So we really were kind of in the middle of nowhere in Staten Island. We had one family who was Israeli that would cross the street that we played with. So it was a very interesting way to, I wasn't in a community. We spent a lot of time outdoors and I spent a lot of time drawing. So definitely shaped who I am. And, it was it was very interesting, being Orthodox and not being in a community as opposed to now I live in, a very big Jewish community. So,
well, when you went to Staten Island, you weren't part of a larger community because Canarsie, I think there are a lot of Jews there. Yeah.
Both sets of my grandparents were there. So I spent most of my time growing up, since we weren't really very close to a shul. We spent most of my time growing up in Brooklyn, in Canarsie, visiting both of my grandparents for all the holidays.
And so when you moved to Staten Island, it wasn't as much?
Yeah, we would walk to shul. It was like a very long walk.
Right.
And, it was a very different experience. But, we kept Shabbos, we kept kosher. My dad, who's my biggest advocate in being a cartoonist, really wanted my sister and me to grow up being independent and also like being extremely, not falling into what other people want to do and kind of make our own paths. And I guess it worked for me. I'm an Orthodox Jewish cartoonist, so,
When did you first start realizing that you had a talent for this? I guess drawing. When did you first start, noticing that as a child?
So I've been drawing people since I was a year old. My parents still have some of the sketches somewhere. And when I was tested for Flatbush, I was 5 years old, tested to go into Flatbush when I turned 6. And the person who tested me told my parents, yeah, she does great in all the tests, but she was off the charts with the visuals. You need to get this girl art lessons. And my mom's like, I'm not going to get a 5-year-old art lessons. But when I turned 6, I was old enough. So I was taking, instead of going to like a day camp, a Jewish day camp or anything like that, I went to an art camp from the time I was 6 until basically I went to the School of Visual Arts for college. So
that's
to get my dream.
Were you happy with that at the time? At that age? I mean, all your friends are going to camp, running around playing, and you're like doing drawing. Were you happy with that?
Oh, I was so happy. I went to day camp when I was 4 and 5. I understood it, but I just loved being able to draw. And not only that, I also love sports. I wasn't your typical Orthodox Jewish girl either, I guess. I was a big basketball and baseball fan, but I loved playing basketball. So I remember some summers I would go to basketball camp and art camp, and it was the best.
Oh, fantastic. So who were some of your influences growing up?
Well, when I read my first Calvin and Hobbes book when I was 11,
I love Calvin and Hobbes, yes.
I realized I wanted to be a cartoonist. I decided when I was 10 that I wanted to be an artist because I had this very big quandary. I had my 5th grade yearbook. You have to fill out what you want to be when you're grown up. And I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was only 10. So I put down a basketball player because I love playing basketball. I was captain of my team for 3 years. I love basketball too. So someone said, you should have put down an artist. I'm like, Yeah, you know what? I should have put down an artist. So I realized I had that moment of revelation when I was 10 years old. And when I was 11, I read my first Calvin and Hobbes books that my dad brought a couple collections home from a Barnes and Noble. Then I realized, oh, I want to be a cartoonist. So I spent most of the first half of my career trying to be a syndicated comic strip artist, which is not exactly the same industry that it was when I was growing up. So
Did you try that? Did you send out,
yeah, I had a few strips. I mean, when I went to the School of Visual Arts when I graduated from Flatbush, and I was there for 4 years, 4 of the most amazing years of my life. Okay. I graduated class valedictorian, and I concentrated on comic strip art. I came up with a few different comics, sent it out. Nothing really came from it. But then the month after I graduated, the first iPhone came out, and the whole industry just completely changed. So everything I'd learned the 4 years prior completely changed. Everything became, everything became totally digitized, and the industry that was already not doing great on decline just kind of like completely went down. So I spent the next decade or so of my career trying to figure out my next path, I guess, figuring out what I wanted to do if it wasn't going to be a comic strip, if I wasn't going to be a syndicated comic strip cartoonist.
It's a shame. I mean, I grew up, looking into the paper to read the comic section, also the sports, and then followed by the comic section always. And that's a thing of the past now for the most part.
Yeah, there's websites and places online, but I'm a member of the National Cartoonist Society, and I went to their awards last year, and Kathy comes up, Kathy Guys White,
right.
Who did Kathy. She went up and spoke, you guys have it so much harder. We just had a cartoon and we put it in the papers and it came to everybody's doors. We didn't have to do all the self-promotion. I was thinking, wow, I don't even know what that's like to just grow up in a world where you could just do your work and not have to figure out the new social media platform of the month.
It's sad that it's a bygone era, I guess. So what's your process? What goes into your process? What makes a good cartoon, I guess? So how do you work it for yourself?
So because I did focus on creating comic strips, the essence of all art is storytelling, right? Whether you do it in one image without words or in a full comic with words. And, so because I wanted to create comic strips, I feel like one of my strongest skill set is taking very complicated terms or jokes or whatever and boiling it down to the essence. Okay. So, I spent 6 years in advertising. I worked on the Red Bull account, creating cartoons for that. And I worked for a company where I was creating ads for Disney and FIFA and Kim Kardashian Hollywood. And it's all the same, right? You sit down and you think, who's the target audience? Mm-hmm. What kind of humor or storytelling you want to get across? Because a lot of my work these days is not necessarily funny, right. Even though I do have a background in Mad Magazine. I have two sides of
I can ask you all about that as well. Yes.
The coin, basically. Sorry?
I said, I'm going to definitely ask you about that part, but yes.
Yeah, sure. So basically it's about boiling down to what is important in a story, So I have the series I'm working on right now. I have a fellowship to help me turn my comics about miscarriages and fertility and pregnancy and child birth related issues into animated shorts. And, with each story, there's so much material. I'm working on a story right now, and the person I'm working with, photography, and Abby Sophia, her story is incredible, and she has diaries and actual, articles she's written fresh from when she was going through it, and it's so difficult to figure out what to not include. But basically, because I have the comic strip background, because I try to think of things and what's important, I figure out what the essence is and what boil it down to what is important and what is repetitive, what is extra. And I think that's really the good key to any joke, to any story, to any comic or any way of storytelling. Figure out what the essence is and draft something the right way to be the most effective.
Not with the humorous stuff. I mean, it's a different thing entirely, because you do a lot of other things now too. So do you prefer like that long form or like the 3-panel strip to like get a little quick joke out?
I like it all. I mean, obviously the quicker stuff is a lot easier and more satisfying because It's just quick to produce. But when you finish a longer form story and you're like, wow, I really told it in those beats and broke it down per page. And, they're both very satisfying in very different ways. Or
So,
maybe not so different, but just very satisfying.
no, absolutely. So, what was you were doing this for? So, what was your first, I guess, like big break?
Um, you know, when I was in college, I interned at Mad Magazine, and that was really like, I still think that the skills that I got in the 6 weeks that I was working there were so invaluable. They put me on the editorial staff with another intern, and they really, listened to us. We weren't getting coffee at all. We were sitting there trying to pitch ideas, trying to give input. It was a really hands-on experience and a really great boot camp on how to be a creative, especially when, how old was I? I must have been 20 when I had it, 19, 20, but I think 20. And it was an amazing experience. And then getting to meet some of my idols. And my year was the last year that they had an annual holiday party. So I got to meet all the heroes whose articles I'd read cover to cover every month for Mad.
That's what I was about to ask you about Mad. I love Mad. I grew up on Mad. I've interviewed several people who used to work at Mad. So so I just want to know, like, again, because I'm so jealous of that. What was it, that whole experience like there too? Just like being with these people there.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, really to see how everything worked behind the scenes, Al Jaffe, to see his original artwork and to actually get the opportunity to meet him. He was such an amazing guy. And anytime I would send him an email, he would write back very warmly. And Sergio Aragonés was just...
I interviewed Sergio. He was fantastic, amazing.
He's just the biggest sweetheart.
Yes.
When the weekend, my husband and I started dating at a Comic-Con one year, and he was really jealous because I went to say goodbye to Sergio, and Sergio was signing a guitar, and all of a sudden he starts to play the guitar he's about to sign, and he looks at me and starts to serenade me. And my husband is like, wait a second here. What's going? He got it all on video, but he's like, maybe I'm a little bit jealous. But the truth is, who wouldn't be jealous of Sergio Aragonés?
I'm just jealous that you got to work with him, so be there. So
Yeah.
who else? Dick DiBartolo I interviewed.
Yeah.
So he's a very kind person.
Dick is so great. He gave a free copy of one of his books to me when I was there. I mean, it was just amazing because Mad Magazine was a part of the DC Comics before they all moved to LA.
Yeah.
Mad was a part of DC Comics, so I used to go up to the DC floor and walk around and see all the art that was there and the pinball machines and the George Clooney costume that was there, of his Batman role. And it just, I would come home every day and every week with just bags of comics and all this stuff. It was so incredible, the whole experience.
And what did you do for Disney?
So I worked for a company that, for a couple of years where, I was writing ads for mobile gaming apps, and I, got to for a few different Disney products. I got to write 15 to 30 second. Actually, some of them were 15 to 30 second ads. Some of them were a little bit longer, a minute and a half. But basically, I would write and direct ads for their company, and it was really fun, just for little mobile games and for apps for kids. And any way to work on Disney material was just super fun.
Fantastic. And a good environment.
So my marketing company that I worked for was one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. We were a small team, maybe about 60 to 80 people at any given time. And we were all creatives who, some of us were creative directors and writing briefs, and we put together the assets for the company. We'd meet with the clients, figure out the ads that they wanted. And then I would pass along the ads to animators who would then animate it for me and send it back to me, and I would direct that. And everybody else had a side. It was a company called Consumer Acquisition, and everybody had a side hustle. I got the job because one of my close buddies from college was my boss, and it was just an amazing. It was a remote job, and everybody supported each other. And then the company got sold to a place in London, and everybody got let go in waves of layoffs. But I'm very grateful for the experience because I learned what it was like to work for a really caring environment where people were truly kind-hearted and supportive of each other. And also, it gave me the tools to really write and direct my own work because, I went to SVA to be a cartooning major and to major in comics. And I, over the years, I developed skills to do storyboards, but I never really had animated anything. And now, because of the whole process, I realized how I could break down my comics. I draw all the assets from my Unspoken cartoonmentary series about all the fertility, pregnancy, and childbirth related challenges. And I create all of the art, and I break it down, and each hand, it has a different movement, each face has different expressions, and I send it to the animator. So having this experience, having worked at this company, and also the one where I did the Red Bull cartoons before, really gave me the insight on how to write and direct my own work. So it's been really cool.
Well, you have such a fascinating career, so many different cool things. I mean, but so you were personally selected to work on a comic campaign by Gretchen Rubin, best-selling author for her novel, The Happiness Project. So how did that all come about?
So, I mentioned that I graduated as class valedictorian from the School of Visual Arts, and in my grade, I was probably the only one who did really happy comics. Everybody else was dark or had fantasy or whatever. I just did really happy comics and happy topics. So right after I graduated, she had approached SVA about which student does happy cartoons, and it was pretty obvious that I was the candidate. So I worked with her, and my comic was actually supposed to be a chapter in her Happiness Project book, but the editor did not want it. So she released it online as a separate comic that you could read digitally, which was a bummer for me. My name is in the book twice, but my comic is not. And I felt like that would have been a really life-changing thing for me to have had that in a number one New York Times bestseller that was in every single publication at the time. But I get really happy. Like, my goal with all my career stuff is to use my cartoon powers for good. So anything that I can do, whether I make someone laugh and smile or make them feel like they're not alone, it's all so important for me. And I love each and every opportunity.
Well, just talking about some of your things that you've done here, one of your drawings, the tribute to Robin Williams after he passed, went viral. So, and I remember seeing it also, and I didn't even realize it was you until after. So it's such a bittersweet and emotional pick. So what's that like to see one of your creations, be shared widely? I mean, what were you feeling when you saw that happening?
I mean, it was incredible. I mean, you always hope that you put everything out there and you hope that people see it. And to actually have something that really touched people and meant something to everybody who was feeling the same sorrow it just felt like I did something important to help someone in that moment of pain. And when you do good, I mean, you just feel good,
After how long did you do it? I mean, did you start seeing that it was, hey, this thing is taking off?
Yeah, it was pretty quick. It happened after Sean Astin had reposted it, and then it started getting shared so many places. So it was pretty quick. It was like the same day.
Really? Wow. And you do the same thing for Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, that one didn't go as far, but it definitely, and I'd seen other people after me. At that point I was trying to learn how to draw digitally because I'd done all my work by hand and on paper. So at that time I had this hug of the day cartoon where I would draw some kind of creature or animal or person hugging someone, like just give you a hug, so you can send someone a hug. And I would take requests also. So I just kind of incorporated it into my Hug of the Day series, and I was happy. It made a difference for people. So I had requests recently to like bring it back again. So maybe I will. But I would also turn it into coloring. I love coloring pages, and so I would draw the hug and also have a coloring page that people could download as well. So,
well, I hope you do bring it back. I think that would be nice. But I want to ask about one of your other highlights, that you were invited guest at the 2009 Israel Presidential Conference. So Arts and Culture panel. So what was that experience like? How did they come to you? What was that whole experience like?
So at the time, I was doing a bunch of different fellowships and programs in Israel. I was in Israel like 6 times over the span of 2.5 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
was a fellowship at the present tense 6-week fellowship where I
Okay.
got to work on my art, and then I came for the ROI, the Schusterman Foundation. They bring 120 people from all over the world for a networking conference. So I went to a couple of those. So I was back and forth, and somewhere along there, someone found out about my work. So they invited me out and flew me out to come speak on a panel, and it was really cool. And I was thinking about that experience a lot this year because one of the speakers in one of the panels there was Dr. Ruth,
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember it was the only time I got to meet her, and I went to I was chatting with her, and I had a really good time. And then later on in the day, when I was leaving that night, I saw her. I said, "Bye, Dr. Ruth," and she like looks at me and blows me a kiss, and
Well,
I was very grateful for that. It was just
what
really.
was she like? Was she just as warm as she seemed?
Oh yes, she was amazing. She is she was an incredible person, and she's just warm and friendly and everything she appears to be.
Oh, fantastic. So look at your credits. You've done a lot of work for Jewish organizations. So is that something that's very important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up, it's a lot different now, but growing up there wasn't really a lot of high quality Jewish content. And it always bothered me when I looked at Jewish books and they weren't illustrated properly, or you could tell that it wasn't a good drawing. And so I spent a good chunk of my career taking opportunities where um, I could basically draw to help improve some facet of the Jewish
Right,
creative
right, yes.
entity. Yeah.
So I mean, I saw you involved in a lot of these things, but I also want to talk about quickly what's not doesn't have to be quickly about the thing that's right behind you, Unspoken, the cartoonmentary series. You were talking about you did a lot of humorous stuff. You seem so like bubbly humorous, and this is you tackle some pretty serious issues on there. So how did that whole come about? I mean, it just seems so far outside of your personality.
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I'm very open. So even when something that's not easy,
Right.
happens to my life, I've never hid anything. So
Okay.
I always feel like it's important what's the point of going through anything really difficult if you can't share it with someone else to help their situation? Because it's the only healing form that's worked for me. So really, the first time I tackled such a difficult topic, I mentioned I was doing a lot of fellowships and programs in Israel.
Yeah.
I met someone in Freund who hired me to create a cartoon for her organization that helps agunot get their gets from their abusive spouses. So an agunah, for those who don't know, are women who are trapped in a Jewish marriage because their husband refused to give them the get or the Jewish divorce document. And it could be years before
Wow.
anything happens, and they're not officially divorced until the husband gives her the document. So we had started this organization, Unmasked, and the first comic that we did was about one woman, Ariella Dodon, who got her get after 10 years of struggling from her abusive, cheating spouse. And it really was it was the first comic that I had that all of a sudden was shared everywhere, and that people would write to me saying how powerful it was. And I told a lot of story in 3 pages. I need to post the comic online again. We released it in time for Tani Esther, the Fast of Esther, which is the day before Purim, which is also known as the International Agunah Day. I released it and I realized how powerful it was and how powerful that storytelling medium was. And Inbal and I, before we got married, like we continued working together, and then, our lives took us on different paths.
Mhm.
But it was really amazing to see how sharing people's stories about the challenges that they went through, how they help others. So when I went through my miscarriage in 2014, I had looked, for those, if you've read my comic or if you haven't, the gist of it is that I was by myself. My husband was out of town, and the entire 5 days from the time I was notified that I was having a miscarriage until the baby was out. By the time my husband came back, it was all done, and I had to go through this traumatic experience by myself.
Oh, oh,
And I I looked for resources online, and at the time there was really nothing else. There were some articles about some people talking about their experience, but like it wasn't the same as feeling like you are put in someone else's shoes.
Right.
You know, with comics, it's iconic, right? And I try to create my cartoons somewhat simplistically because this way anybody can feel like it's them in there. You know, it's if you watch a movie, it's starring Brad Pitt or someone, like it's Brad Pitt's story, you know, or this person who it's about. But by putting it in a cartoon with very minimalistic drawings, you feel like, you know, it's your eyes and you could be going through this. You're the narrator, you know? So I knew I was going to tell the story, but it took me a few years to get my, get into the right headspace where I was able to share it. And then I did. And then Mayim Bialik shared it and helped it go viral.
How did she come to that? How did she come to this series originally? And what's it like? I mean, hearing, you heard from her about it?
I mean, you know, she helps support it. So every now, you know, when I have a new comic, I'll email her and her assistant and, you know, and tell them I have a new piece of work, and they will share it in whatever capacity they can at the moment. But at that time, she had her website, Grok Nation. So she was looking for content to feature and share. So we have a lot of mutual friends. We're actually related through marriage. I've never met her in person, but we have family, mutual family. But you know, like any Jewish representative, somewhere there's a connection somewhere. So anyway, I was put in touch with her, and we had like a nice 10-minute phone conversation. And you know, she said she would help share this. You know, we had to figure out the right time to share the comic, which we decided. But my miscarriage happened right after Mother's Day, so we basically shared it around the same time, the same week that I had my miscarriage, right after Mother's Day and before Memorial Day. It seemed like a really nice time to share it. And she also had featured me on her Grok Nation site for National Cartoonist Day earlier that month. And then she put it up on all of her socials, and it really like made an impact because nobody at that point had seen anything quite like this virally online. You know, they're always, listen, the father of comics, of graphic novels, is, you know, the creator of Mouse, Art Spiegelman. Mm-hmm. So comics has been known for having its own, you know, serious medium. And I was very influenced by the book Mom's Cancer by Brian Faiz. Like, you know, comics has traditionally, especially graphic novels and comic books, have been heavy topics that have been tackled. But I don't know if people had shared their story so openly online at that moment, that in a way that at least the community that I shared it with had seen. And then from that, I had gotten some speaking engagements. I was flown out to Limmud in UK and was able to give some workshops there and in other places as well. But it was amazing to see the impact of it. When I went to the Limmud session, someone came up and ran to me and said, you know, your comic came out the week I had my miscarriage. Oh. And I could not wait to meet you to tell you how much your comic really helped my husband and myself.
I was going to ask that. Have you heard from a lot of people that, you know, saying how that would touch them or affected them?
Yeah, I know every time I put something else up, someone reaches out and says it came at the right time, or I wish that I had this when I'd gone through mine decades ago. So I see how much this really helps people. And, you know, people know that I have the comic out. So I have friends who would email me, you know, 5-6 years after my comic was out, you know, hey, I remember you did a comic and I just had a miscarriage and it really, really helped me. And the fact that you had a comic about a husband's perspective really helped my husband as well. So it's really giving voice to people and reassurance to people that you're not alone in this.
How cathartic has it been for you?
Very cathartic. You know, you feel like you have a hard time moving on after such a traumatic event happened. And I don't want to say I'm grateful for it. I feel like I understand why I had the miscarriage now. And I'm definitely thankful for being able to understand people better and to empathize with people better. People who've had it worse or better or whatever than me. Like, you know, I'm not the first, unfortunately, I'm not the last, and I'm not the easiest miscarriage, and I'm not the most difficult miscarriage, you know, but just having it really makes you understand what other people have gone through, even if their stories are quite different than yours.
You also tackled, I mean, I saw postpartum depression and things like that.
Yeah, actually, the comic that I'm working on now on my next animated short, I started working on it 4.5 years ago in 2019. But I was at the time going through a very difficult pregnancy, and then I had postpartum depression. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I was hospitalized for walking pneumonia 3 times in 3 weeks, and
Oh,
I lost 5 pounds in my 7th month of pregnancy, which you're not supposed to do when
right.
you're pregnant. You're supposed to be gaining weight. So I put the project on pause because I needed to get into a better mental
Headspace,
headspace.
sure.
And then around February 2020, I started feeling better. I said, okay, I'm going to start picking this up again. And then March 2020, a little pandemic came along. And I said, you know what? I can't tell these stories right now. I just need to survive and not get
Sure.
deep into more difficult topics. So I put the project on pause for a few years. And then I was very lucky last December to find out that I was going to be a fellow in the Jewish Writers Initiative Digital Storytellers Lab.
Oh, great.
And they are supporting the production of my existing comics into shorts and animated shorts, which just totally new experience for me. And as well as I'm getting to produce a new story, the story that I literally have the script marked up from 4.5 years ago. Like it's just the script that has been sitting there. And I'm working on that and hoping to have that out in time for October, which is miscarriage, pregnancy and infant loss awareness month.
Well, you just touched upon something because as you're speaking, I mean, I've also written some things that have just, I felt certain things at the time that makes it, I can't go on with this project. So just, it's getting me to a place that I don't want to go. So you have had that as well.
Oh yeah, there's so many projects sitting there that I was gung ho about, and I didn't
Um,
either for one reason or another. And it's very satisfying right now to have this project that I've put on hold that is not no longer on hold. Like I'm working on it, I'm getting it done, and it's such an important story, and it will help so many people. And it's just very satisfying that I didn't let it just sit on the side
uh,
and you know gather dust.
no, that's commendable. You've also done several collaborations with other people I've seen. So how is it working with someone else? Do you find prefer working alone? Do you prefer working? Is it okay for you working with someone else also?
I'm a people person. I
Yeah.
love working with people. I miss my full-time job where I got to Zoom with people every day. I'm very lucky to have a part-time job right now with an amazing company, and
Mm.
I get to really kind people. And I work for Tiny Windows Consulting, and I work helping Jewish nonprofits with their ad campaigns.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and I got to do coloring. One of my clients is the Jewish Grandparents Network, and I get to do coloring pages for them and social posts, and I get to write and draw and graphic design. So it's really, really fun. But it's just it's there's so much depth to it, and it's a great way to it's very just the whole process is very satisfying.
No, it's good. One of the things, another thing that's fantastic. You did storyboarding for Comedy Central. So what's that like? What are your responsibilities there?
Oh, so at the time I was working for this company where I was doing storyboards for commercials. I had done ads. Like it was really, really fun for Kids at Play. That was the company, and they, every once in a while they'll call me for some storyboard work. So I got to do ads for Bud Light, Purina, um, Kit Kat, like all these fun brands, and got to do shorts for a Comedy Central, storyboards for a Comedy Central short, and it was called Handy. Actually, the funny thing about that is that they sent me the script to do the storyboards for, and I was reading the script. I'm like, this would be really good for my husband's an actor. He has a friend who's like a hand model. I'm like, this would be really good for him, Eric Lane. And then I find out the whole script was written for him. Like that's not even like a random Jewish geography connection. That was just like a random connection. But I had so much fun. I got to do a few episodes for that, and it was great. It was just a really fun project to like, and it was very satisfying to see how you storyboard something, and then like there's the actual scene. And I think on my website I have some like shots of what I drew and how it came out, and it's pretty cool.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I love the whole thing of storyboard. When I see the storyboards for movies, I think that's incredible. I love that you do that. He also, so I want to talk about going back to one of the Jewish things on your website I saw, which I loved also, the Parsha coloring pages. So
Yeah.
what made you decide to start doing that?
So a month into the pandemic, I lost my job working for the Red Bill ads because, when there's no there's no activities going on, you don't need all the advertising. So some friends of mine actually reached out to me and offered to pay me to do a weekly Parsha coloring page. And so I did the page, and I also included another page. I decided to do something that united everybody. It doesn't matter your level of Judaism, you can enjoy this. So the one way I do that is by not having people. I had anthropomorphic items for the most part, except for baby Moses. I think everybody can agree babies are cute. And, hopefully it's not too much of they're cute. You don't have to worry about offending anybody with babies. Right. So I just wanted to create cartoons with anthropomorphic animals that would help people and our items and help people understand the Parsha. And I'd have a whole page written up about it. And then, so I did that for a year. And then after that, I put it into a coloring book. And now it's actually syndicated at a paper in Cincinnati, in the American Israelite. They syndicate it every week.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. So Jewish organizations, like, they basically know who you are now. So they reach out to you, or you have to go solicit?
Sometimes, I mean, like anything, you have to solicit. Sometimes, I'm referred to, and, for a while, I had a weekly comic strip for the OU called Of Biblical Proportions, where I would write and create comic strips about the Torah that week. Mm-hmm. So that was in 2008, 2009. They had it on their weekly newsletter, and it was really great. It was there for like 6 months, and then their funding went bye-bye. So my comic went bye-bye, but it was really fun. So sometimes they find me online, and sometimes they get referrals. And it's always fun to just get new projects that I can feel like I can tap into all of me to do.
Well, you've touched upon one of the things, I think, but what are you working on next?
Well, right now I am working on my next animated short. I'm putting the finishing touches on my next comic, and then I'm going to adapt that comic immediately into an animated short. And it's really incredible story about photographer Abby Sophia, and how she's been very open about how she had to, she was pregnant with twin girls, which was her dream, mm-hmm. and how she found out that, through IVF, which is difficult enough to do. And then she found out she had to reduce one of them because of really, bad prognosis for one of the twins. So it's her story about trying to come to a decision about what to do and how she managed that. And then I'm going to be adapting my comic, The Diagnosis, about the Down syndrome diagnosis, about woman figuring out her, I had that comic out. We released it in 2019 for Down Syndrome Awareness Day. So that's the next comic I'm working on. So, finishing out my fellowship, and I have a few other projects that I'm working on pitching around, and, I have other people, I'm looking at a couple of scripts people want to collaborate. So there's a bunch of stuff up in the air. So we'll see where the next few months take me. I'm very excited about the opportunities that are coming.
To do then. So
yeah.
How can people follow you on social media?
So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, at Chari Pere Art, Chari with the C, so it's ChariPereart. My website is charipere.com, and my Unspoken series live on YouTube. So right now I have 2 videos out. You feel free to describe there for Unspoken cartoonmentary. On
Twitter also?
I'm on Twitter too. I don't use it as much, but also Chari Pere Art. Mm-hmm. And And I have a YouTube series that has also some behind the scene videos, some trailers. So I'm going to be building up more content. I'm also working on getting a Patreon so that anybody who can wants to support the project and, real human art, non-AI art, telling real human stories. I'm working on that as well. So I hope to have a lot of things launched in time for October.
Well, you've written and drawn a lot about people going through rough times. So, what advice would you give to people who are probably going through their own tough times right now?
Um, First, the most important thing is to surround yourself with people who are supportive in the way that you need to be supportive, because people will say things that are not helpful or helpful to them, and that's not you.
Right.
So you need to make sure to find the right people, read the right resources, give yourself grace and as much ice cream as you need to get through these difficult times. Or if you're lactose intolerant, whatever else, fill in the blank of whatever you prefer, if it's chocolate or pretzels or whatever, and just give yourself grace and the space to cope with whatever you're going through, because it's normal. And in order to get better, you need to feel better, and mentally and physically. So the most important thing is just to find the right people who will support you, and if something bothers you or something upsets you, give yourself the time to deal with it properly and then move on. Because if you just shove stuff back deep down, that's not dealing with it. It comes out in other ways.
Well, Chari, I want to thank you again for coming on. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. Looking up through your work before you coming on, I've become a big fan of your work, and there are a lot of great pieces on there, just for fun pieces, and also that could help people going through certain things too. So this has been a lot of fun getting to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. It's been fun getting to meet you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. Again, a very special thanks to Chari Pere. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.